Hey everyone, welcome to another exciting episode of 7 Minute Scaling Secrets, where we interview entrepreneurs and learn a secret on how they scaled up their businesses. Today we have a special guest, BJ Cowie, who is the founder and director of Art Glass Solutions. Jane, can you tell us more about what Art Glass Solution does? This episode was brought to you by Superscaling. Join the Superscaling Ignite program today and learn how you can systemize and superscale your business so that your revenues can grow to at least $100,000 a month with a productive team from all over the world, raving fans as clients and happy founders who have true freedom. Visit superscaling.com/ignite today, and now back to the episode.
We're a company based in Singapore, and we started in 2008, some time ago. Our mission really is to enrich the environment, the lived environment that we create around us. So that means designing, making, and installing artworks. And for me, it's really important that the artwork is responsive to the space and really accentuates the space as well.
This is a great journey because you've actually started off as an artist and managed to transition into making art into a sustainable business. How does that happen? How can somebody who is an artist uh do that successfully?
There's lots of ways that you can do that actually, and everyone has to find their own way of doing it. I'm from Australia, and when I was living and working in Australia, I was making products. I'm a glass blower by training, and so I would make glass products and design them so that they would be saleable in a specific market, which was the craft market. So in Australia, like a long time ago, there was a lot of craft shops, and there were also a lot of makers. The crafts movement was really beginning in the 70s, 80s in Australia, well, internationally actually, and especially for glass. Glass really came into the fore in the 80s, 90s. So I was making products that were decorative, bright and cheery, and sold in small craft shops and crafts galleries around Australia. But when I came to live and work in Singapore, that was in the early 2000s, I realized that things are different in Australia, in Singapore. The houses are smaller, and so people don't buy as many objects, decorative objects, to have into their home. They really have more functional objects. It was interesting because when I was in Australia, I was making objects sort of like this big, sort of tabletop sort of size, utilitarian size. I also had worked in Japan for a year, and when I was there, I started to design and make very small items because the Japanese like really small things. So then when I went back to Australia, I went, oh, I have to scale up again. So it really indicated to me, that experience, that it really depends where you are, is what type of objects people need. And so coming to Singapore, I realized people didn't really need objects, but I found a market making larger scale installations for bigger corporations and hotels. And I sort of pieced together that I had been on that track, in my childhood, making big installations in my bedroom and so on. And I really wanted to install a creative artwork that would create a space, that would accentuate a space. So I sort of fell into that almost by chance through being here. But since then, that's my passion that I've really enjoyed to pursue, to introduce into a public space an artwork that is beautiful, decorative, links to the space itself, and also talks a little bit about the company that's commissioning the work as well. So I think artwork plays a really important role to not just decorate, but inform and engage people within the space.
That's awesome. That's one of the core tenets of business, that whatever solution, product, service that we are doing has to fill a need. And that need is really determined by the market. You can't just go into the market with a service or product that you think is great and then expect the market to kind of adapt and shift in order to accommodate and accept that. I bet if you had gone the same way with the mindset of Australia or Japan or Singapore and tried moving around with the exact same mindset, that it should be what the market wants, you would find great friction and great resistance to the products and the artwork that you'd be doing.
Yeah.
And that's the same case for business, any business.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like, I probably couldn't do what I do now if I was still in Australia,
Yeah.
because when I go back to Australia, I see that the attention to larger scale artworks really isn't there, and it's more a design aesthetic. So there's no real handmade creativity in the large scale art installations. So, I feel quite lucky to have been here, to sort of come here and found a job, but then gone on to start my own business and really sort of blossomed into a market that I was quite unexpected, actually.
Wow.
So I think whenever you have a talent or a skill that's creative, you need to sort of go and find out what's out there, what other people are doing, how they're doing it, but then you need to find what other people are doing. Then you need to find a space, a gap in that market that people aren't fulfilling. And when you get in there and fill that gap in the market,
Yeah.
that's when you make a niche for yourself and you can actually specialize in that particular area.
Absolutely. I mean, that's market research and developing a unique selling proposition. It's like all essential parts of a business. How do you even, start an art business here in Singapore? As somebody who's foreign to Singapore at that point of time, you probably wouldn't have the connections or the local knowledge. How do you even like start finding customers for this business that you created?
Yeah, well, you haven't really created a business until it starts operating. So, so yeah, it's sort of interesting. That's a really interesting question, actually. How did I start? I think I just started with great optimism and sort of struggled on for a few years. And I think the first 3 years of that business were actually really telling and learning. And I would write a lot of reports at the time. So each year I would analyze the people I was talking to and what we spoke about. And so the first year I was really dealing with interior designers, but not getting very far. The second year, contractors were finding me, but then they would just take my ideas and do them anyway. So not getting very far. And I think the third year I started to touch base with interior designers and architects. And so if they wanted something unique or individual for a particular project, they became the clients that started to work. Also, getting yourself out there and doing exhibitions. At the time, Art Singapore was like a trade show for artists. And so we showed in that exhibition for 3 years. And most of the customers I have today, I found, connections during those 3 years. So it's really about promoting yourself. But the world has changed in 10 years. I tell you, it's changed incredibly. So, everyone's talking about social media. I think it's important to be out there on LinkedIn and Instagram, places like that, and really start to use those markets to get yourself known to start with. So
Mm,
yeah, so I think marketing right up front is really important. You don't have a business until you start making money, really,
yeah.
and so it's finding that niche, the customer that really needs your product, so that they can do well in their own life and their own business.
Okay.
So
Well,
finding that market, but then spreading the word so that people can find you if they need your services.
here's something that people tend to think about marketing, and I want to hear your opinion about it. So some people think that marketing is like a bad word to them. They don't like marketing because it feels like they're selling themselves, and it's something that they're uncomfortable with doing. What do you think of that, especially as an artist?
Yeah, I think everyone's marketing these days. Like, I hang out on those sort of platforms a bit, but I'm just like, oh, well, everyone stop advertising to me, sort of thing. But I think it's about, I've always been good at putting up a sign. I'm not so good when people come and knock on my door and, but I'm very good at putting up the sign. And I was like that in Australia too, when I was really just starting out, in my early 20s or whatever. So I would put an advertisement in a magazine. So that's the same as putting, an advertisement on Instagram or wherever. So I think it's important that people will know where you are and the service that you're offering. And then in the beginning, you don't know who your customers are. So you've sort of got to spread the net widely so that people, pay interest, and then the people that are really interested will come closer and finally commission you to do something. So it depends on what type of product you're selling. I tend to sell an expensive big item, so I only need a few customers. But if you're selling a small, cheap, inexpensive object, then of course you need to find many customers because they'll only buy one, sort of thing.
Right.
So then you have to go and analyze what your product is. But as a creator who's making, who's passionate about what they do, if you want to go more on an exhibition tract, so you don't want to sell a product that sells, but you want to make exhibition work, then that's a different way of marketing your product as well. Again, you need to be, I think, on social media, but then you need to find galleries, and you need to make sure that they're good galleries that have the customers that will buy from them.
Right.
So that's, being an exhibition artist is very different, I think, to being, a commission-based or a product-based artist. And when you're an exhibition artist, you still need to follow certain guidelines of, saleability in a way, but you can be a little bit more focused on your own practice and on your own passions when you're developing your artwork. So, but yeah, I'm interested to get back into gallery exhibitions, but I actually won't be selling anything in those exhibitions because I tend to work more with ephemeral materials because the artwork is about the process. So again, when you're an artist, you want to communicate something with the thing that you're doing, whether it's performance art or visual arts or audio arts. So you need an audience that's going to listen or see and appreciate in some way and give something back to you in some way. So if it's a sale or if it's, a thumbs up, it's still that sort of communication that you have as a practitioner when you want to express an idea. So it's really interesting being an artist and trying to survive and figuring out how to survive too. Especially in Singapore, because I think there's not a lot of galleries here. But, the world is really global now, so you can select a gallery in Korea or, Australia and try and establish a relationship with the gallery so that they sell your work.
I see.
But not necessarily in the country you live.
And seeing like there's anywhere that clients can come from, do you have a process to choose clients then, or is it anyone that you'll be able to work with?
I don't really choose my customers. I'm actually I put some work in Australia actually in an exhibition there where I had to pay to make the artwork, so that was purely speculative, but it was really great because I could make an artwork that I wanted to make instead of an artwork that a client was wanting to get something made like this sort of thing, and to see if there was interest there in my work. And I found that there was, but the appreciation and who would buy it and where they'd put it was sort of a different. It wasn't sort of totally matching. And then I recently put some work in an exhibition in Belgium to see what's going to happen there as well.
Wow.
And I mean, even me putting some work in there means that I get to see the exhibition and I look at the work and so I get to see what the market is really. So yeah, when you're figuring out your market, you've got to try a few things that don't make any money, to try and just learn more about what's there. I mean, when I was younger, I was traveling a lot. I traveled all over the world and worked in different studios and countries. And so I got to see how people were working firsthand.
Right.
If you have the opportunity to travel to different countries and get a part-time job or just work for free in a studio or something, you can learn so much from that experience to figure out what it is you want to do, but also where you can actually do that.
How would you describe the difference in the various countries that you're, having exhibitions in and having clients in? What is it that they are looking for that's different from each other?
That's just too much to dive into. But no, they're different culturally, but also the spaces that they have to feel are different. The histories, of the different countries. Like it's been really interesting for me to look at the artwork in the exhibition in Belgium. It's a garden outdoor exhibition, and even the style of the work. I feel Singapore is quite a contemporary country. I think it's more contemporary sometimes than some of the Western countries,
Wow.
because there's always change and growth, and the architecture is always refreshing.
Right.
So it's really interesting how modern this country feels. When I go back to Australia, I'm just like, they don't have Wi-Fi here. What the? So yeah.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting to just see all those different countries and see the different cultures, and even in Belgium too. It's very interesting to see the artworks and just think about the style and the technique and so on.
Wow, cool. So at with every episode of this podcast, there are two questions that I ask every podcast guest, and I'll ask them of you as well. The two questions are, number one, what is the most important habit to be a successful entrepreneur?
Mm. I think it's determination. You have to be a fighter. I think, especially within the arts industry, you have to keep going and keep doing, keep searching, keep being reflective, to really sort of make it. Because yeah, it's tough, really. To be honest, it's really tough. So to be an entrepreneur and an artist is even tougher, because they say that artists are the most highly trained and the most lowly paid profession. So, so we do train for years and we aren't being paid very much. So you really have to want to do it with a passion to be in the arts. And yeah, again and again, I'll sit down and just go, nah, I really want to make this work. How do I make this work? So you've got to figure out your own style and your own path, basically.
Cool, to be determined. I think that's something that's essential in any field, especially if you want to be an entrepreneur. Cool. And the second question, what advice would you give to another business owner?
Another business owner or another artist?
Another, well, we could have it a bit more specific to maybe a creative and a business owner, somebody that's looking into the art business.
Yeah, I think it's figuring out what you do best and then really focus in on that. Of course, if you're starting a business, if you want to employ other people, then it's about having a vision then for the entity that you're going to create. So, yeah, I think it's having a stable end goal that's going to work with the marketing work that you've done, the marketing research, figure out where you want to end up in the future, and then you've got to take the steps to actually to get there. So you got to have passion, but you've also got to be methodical at the same time and do a bit of planning.
Oh man, that's so that's literally what most businesses require to have a vision, right? Because if the business owner, no matter what field you're in, whether you're creative or a tech person, you need to make sure that vision is first of all clear to you before you can build a team and tell the team, where this vision, where this path, what the plan is. And that is critical. I think that's one of the more essential things that a business leader, a business owner needs to do in order to really have a business that can be successful. And I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
it's even more so in the creative space.
Yeah, and I think it's really tough too when you're an artist because really it is two different sides of the brain, I will say. I will sit down and write a business plan, but then I need to be a maker. And they're different parts of the brain. So you really need to figure out how to divide your time, like just focus on the art making or then just focus on the business. So it's sort of divisive. So it's quite challenging, I think, when you're an artist or a creative. Yeah, if you're really passionate and you really have that goal in mind, then you will split your time and your brain so that you can do both tasks, basically.
I think some time for one quick question because I really want to ask you about this process that you go through, this splitting of tasks. It's really tough. Is there a process that you go through or a routine that you take to help you be in the right state for the right kind of tasks that you're working on?
Yeah, I don't think I'm really successful at doing that, but at the moment I have different spaces where I work in. So one space is where I'm really creative and doing my own work. The other space is where I'm doing the educational classes. So it's got a different energy. And then another space is more quiet. The desk is here, it's more private. And so that's when I do the thinking and, the paperwork and so on. So yeah, I think different spaces actually assists you to just walk to a place and then you're in a different headspace. So then you can take on a different task.
Oh, I love that. People think that space or your environment doesn't matter, but it absolutely does. It helps shape thought. It helps put you in the right kind of mindset. It's amazing, and this is the reason why companies who go on company retreats take it outside of the office, go to a completely different environment because that environment is so crucial to putting your mind and your thoughts in the appropriate situation, in the appropriate like mindset.
Yeah.
Awesome. Jane, how can the audience best reach out to you and Art Glass Solutions?
Yeah, well, I've got a website. Hasn't been changed for a few years, I think now, but my email address is on there and my phone number as well. It's pretty interesting now. You can communicate via Instagram and LinkedIn, so many places, but pretty much a phone call, a WhatsApp works, an email works to Art Glass Solutions. So yeah, the more traditional ways of contacting me are the best way to get in touch.
Awesome. Is this artglasssolutions.com?
That's the one.
Awesome, and I'll link that into the show notes below. Thank you, everybody. This has been another awesome episode of 7-Minute Scaling Secrets, where we interviewed Jane Cowie of Art Glass Solutions. If you guys like this episode, please remember to like, comment, and share this episode with your friends. And I look forward to speaking to you guys on the next episode.